I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. My guest today is Ahmed Reza. He's the founder of Yobi, which we're going to get into in a little bit, but I am really excited about this episode because Ahmed's story is crazy. He's had so many lives in one life, right? From being a child actor in Bangladesh, then he was going to Cornell while homeless at the same time. He's a Milken scholar. He's traveling the globe. Somehow, for some reason, despite being a multi-successful time entrepreneur, you've done so much. Mark Zuckerberg's dad is on your list of advisors when I was doing my research. How does that happen? Why are you friends with him in a way that he is part of your company? That feels like a good way to put your whole life together here.
All right. Well, so Dr. Zuckerberg, who is an extremely nice person, is also a dentist, and my first company was focused on dentists. We were at a dental conference called Dental Town, and I needed to get attention and needed to figure out how do I get attention. So we all put on sumo suits, and we were doing sumo wrestling in the conference. It was very uncharacteristic of a medical or dental conference. So Dr. Zuckerberg rolls by and goes,
we need to take a quick time out here.
Sure.
Go back and just repeat what you said for the last 10 seconds. I heard dental conference. I heard sumo. Like, who had this idea? This is not two things that I put together at the same time.
Well, we're geeks, right? And we were trying to figure out how do we go to a dental conference and get attention. We'd called our call analytics system Call Sumo because we could make fun of the fact that most of us were overweight programmers, and decided to bring some sumo suits along with us. And as soon as we put on the sumo suits, we were like the center of attention. Everybody wanted to come and take pictures with us. Of course, it kind of peeved some of the other folks there who were like, if we'd known that sumo suits would be such a hit, we wouldn't have put on our regular suits. But yeah, so it was just a play on the fact that we were all like overweight programmers.
And then what were you going to say? Something about Dr. Zuckerberg from there?
Yeah, so Dr. Zuckerberg is walking by and he's like, "What are you guys doing? This is so uncharacteristic." We stood out, right? And he comes over and I said, "Well, Doc, I'm an ex-NASA engineer who was into artificial intelligence, and I figured out how to attribute phone calls for dentists from marketing keywords to conversions." And little did I know that Dr. Zuckerberg used to code with Mark when he was younger, and he's a geek. So he started geeking out with me, and we became fast friends. And he after that, I followed up with him, and he's been giving me advice on business and life, and he's been a close ally and friend throughout the years. And I'm very lucky to call him an advisor on our team now.
It feels like this is such a common story in your life. People very, bold-faced names like that one, right? Michael Milken is a friend of yours, as you're one of the early Milken Global Scholars going back more than 20 years now, right? There's a lot of names that you seem to you have this knack about you that you're always with a very interesting person.
I feel very fortunate and very blessed. I think if I count my blessings, I think I've been incredibly blessed with being around wonderful people and being in the company of wonderful people and being mentored by amazing people. So I don't know what to attribute it to besides just being lucky in that sense. At the time that I became a Milken Scholar, I didn't really know what it was about. Just a dumb kid from the ghetto at the time. It was only in ensuing years that I realized, like, oh my God, Michael Milken's a legend. I can't believe it. Like, people would call you Mike Milken mentors you? Are you sure? I'd be like, yeah, it's Mike Milken.
Like just some guy that I met named Mike Milken. Yeah.
Yeah, he gave us a scholarship. He's very nice. Talked to us about human capital and some other economic things, which kind of go over my head. As an 18-year-old, human capital really does go over your head. But over the years, it's kind of sunk in. Over the years, all the messaging and the mentorship sank in. Probably one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur, why I felt so driven to do what I do.
Tell me a little bit about Yobi, your current big project. You've got multiple projects at any time, right? But this is the current one. You mentioned the earlier one, like the dentistry and picking up calls and attributing it, because that's a big issue with a lot of small businesses, right? It was, how do I reach people, and then who's reaching me? Where do they come from? How do I spend my marketing dollars? Is it, a lot of it you can't measure, right? The billboard, the local newspaper, the mailer. Okay, Facebook, Google, Twitter, maybe I can measure, but they're bombarded with choices. Is Yobi, because I know it's for small business too, is this an outgrowth of what you had done in the dental work originally?
So yeah, the dental startup, which was my first business, started kind of accidentally. I was trying to prove one of my friends wrong. I was trying to prove that he shouldn't be spending as much money as he was spending on Yellow Pages every month. And I rolled this call tracking system, which would record all the inbound calls to his business, to his dental practice, and forward them to his office anyways. But because I was able to record it, I could tell which one of his marketing was bringing him the best patients and which one wasn't working. At the time, he was spending $3,000 a month on Yellow Pages, and he was spending another $3,000 a month on other advertising. And that was the lifeblood of his business. And he had no idea which one worked. He just kind of crossed his fingers, hoped it would work. And after three months of recording, analyzing that, doing very basic analytics, like if you're running an e-commerce firm, or if you live in Silicon Valley, or you work in tech, this is really basic stuff. I classified his calls, showed him the data. Only 56 of the 1,000 phone calls were from Yellow Pages. So it was pretty obvious that wasn't, it wasn't worth the money.
And is that because there was a separate number that had a different phone
correct.
number?
So each one of the channels had a different number. This is very basic call tracking, but there's really sophisticated call tracking.
Yeah, like my plumber has 10 different phone numbers, and I said, I don't know which is the real one. He said, they're all real. It just tells me which source that you're calling from. Is it from the mailer or from the website or the phone book? So it's the same thing, yeah.
Right, so that they can know. And that way they can optimize their marketing. It also provides recording, so you can tell, well, what times are calls coming in, what am I missing, what are the low-hanging fruit. We ended up making the dentist an extra $400,000 a year on average. And it really ranged. If you were a very aggressive business person who knew what was going on, who was learning business fast, you'd make an extra $1 million a year. And that's when I realized that things that are taken for granted in the enterprise world are completely missing in small business world, because it's harder to get to the smaller businesses. And while the small businesses know value, they may not know the correct terms for things. Me, for example, I'm an engineer who started a business, and I didn't know what a CRM was, until we had done over $1 million in revenue. And that was insane, because there was somebody with a business degree sat down with me one day, we met at a conference, said, "You really don't know what a CRM is?" I said, "No, I don't know what a CRM is." And sat down, explained to me what customer journeys are, what the customer relationship management software does. And it was a revelation to me. I was like, yeah, I kind of built my own in Excel and using Python, and I didn't know you could buy it off the shelf. So there's a lot of small business owners that know business, that know service, that know value, but they may not be educated in the technical terms. And that's one of the reasons why they may not know that they need artificial intelligence for their business. They may not know that they need analytics, marketing attribution. Some of them learn down the road, but SMBs are harder to get to. So my friend didn't have that solution. As soon as I built it for him, I realized there were so many other businesses that needed it. And that kind of inspired Yobi. So Yobi is basically this very intelligent phone system. Well, it starts with phone, but I've realized phone isn't how we communicate anymore. Phone is one of the mediums. So it brings all of the ways that your customer can communicate with you into one simple app that you can run on your phone, that you can run on your computer. So this new assistant that you hire, they probably have a mobile phone. They can download Yobi, log in, and pick up just where you left off a conversation with your customer. So we made it super simple, looks just like a regular smartphone, but it is a very sophisticated system.
So was the original business, the original company you had, that was just for dentists and phone calls? And correct. Now it's all small businesses and all methods of communications. Is it the same idea, but now expanded across medium and vertical? Is that right?
Correct. So that's where I realized the technological shortcoming. So my previous company was a marketing firm that was bought by New Patients Inc., which was a much older marketing firm. They were looking for more technology, AdWords, and such. So after selling that, I realized I really wanted to focus on the tech. I wanted to focus on the artificial intelligence and the analytics piece that would empower not just dentists, but so many other small businesses. There are over 38 million small businesses in the United States alone. And small businesses is kind of a misnomer because it clumps a lot of businesses together. So if you just started and you have $100,000 a year in revenue or $1,000 a year in revenue, you're a small business. If you have $25 million a year in revenue, you're still a small business. And 25 million is a lot of money.
That's a very different type of company. Yeah.
Correct. So there's a huge untapped market, and a lot of software wasn't built for small businesses because of the challenges in getting to them. But I think more and more companies are waking up to the fact that this is just too large of a market to ignore, especially with what we see coming. In downturns, it's small businesses that turn things around. It's the entrepreneurs that pick ourselves up by the bootstraps and get the economy going again. Which is why I'm really excited to be building software for small businesses. And I'm really excited that they're buying it. After COVID, they started adopting software faster than they have in the past because everything changed. And if there's one thing that you can say about small business entrepreneurs, they are very resourceful. Having been one myself for most of my life, have to be resourceful, always have to look out. So when you see the pandemic, I think most small business owners are like, hey, what should I do in the future? Because the future is not going to be like the past.
Give some numericals so people understand the track record of success that you're having right now with Yobi. If you can share revenue or growth or customer base or some kind of numbers so people get a sense for, wow, this is really starting to take off.
So just to frame it, numbers can be all over the place, right? And the internet, you hear millions and billions, but small businesses are unique. So my previous small business, that was my previous business, which serves small businesses, dentists, we had hundreds of customers, and those hundreds of customers, resulted in millions in revenues. So these are not super small customers paying you $10 a month. They're paying more. And some of the largest businesses in dentistry that do marketing, they have customer bases of 2,000 customers or 3,000 customers. Even publicly listed ones will say, oh, we have 12,000 customers, 12,000 small businesses. So while in something like Facebook, you'll hear there's 2 billion users in the small business world, that's not true. So when I launched Yobi, I thought to myself, like, man, wouldn't it be great to have like 200 customers find us and sign up? Because that's one of the biggest issues in getting to small businesses is the sales cost, right? They're busy, they don't want to be bothered, so you end up spending a lot on marketing and sales to just get to them. So we built Yobi, put it in various app stores, and said the philosophy and thinking was they're going to find us. They're going to be sitting there in the lockdown and say, hey, there's got to be some way that I can still communicate with my customers that we're coming back even after the lockdowns. So we launched. I self-funded it at that point because I really believed in it. I really believed that they'd be looking. And for the first couple of months, we had like 200 or 300. I was like, hey, this is really cool that we had 200 or 300 people that were signing up. They were starting to use Yobi. And then suddenly, one month, 1,000 signups happen. And I'm like, what's going on?
Like out of the blue, like just this huge spike.
Yeah, I guess part of that was because the app stores had to trust us, and we started ranking higher and higher on the Google Play Store, and I think we ranked higher than Google Voice.
Wow!
So that was pretty awesome, and I think a lot of our customers, small business customers especially, like us more than Google Voice because Google Voice gives you, a one phone number that one person can use. We give you a phone number that your whole team can use, right? It's much more collaborative, and not just the phone number. You can connect your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, however your customers connect with you, you can answer back. you can be responsive. So fast forward, we've had over 13,000 signups, and it's gotten crazy because we were still working on the product. We're still iterating on the product, making it better, talking to customers, getting feedback and improving. So our marketing engine really hadn't turned on. As a matter of fact, one customer asked us to delete their account, and I personally follow up with folks that ask that because I want to know if they had a bad experience or something. And the reason for asking to leave and delete their account was they said, this is just too good to be true. I've never heard of you guys. Your website doesn't describe all of these cool things that you guys do. This is insanely good. Like, this must be spyware of some sort. You must be selling my data. Right? And I think that was like devastating and the most flattering email that I've gotten. So I emailed them. He said, it looks like there's a company whose product got ahead of their marketing. As a product guy, that's the greatest compliment you can give me, right? But as a business owner, that's not good.
What happened with that customer then? How did you talk to them and say, hey, no, like, I'm
yeah,
not spyware, or maybe you are spyware, I don't know.
No, as soon as I responded back and I said, you're correct, our marketing hasn't caught up to our product because we've been really focused on making sure that the customers are happy. We have all of these features that are not even on our website because, again, we see the market, we see the opportunity. And even without doing like much advertising, we've been getting an insane amount of inbound requests. And I'm not a big believer in over marketing and over promising. I'd rather over deliver. And I promised him that we would improve our marketing, which is a really weird thing to promise a customer. But I said, we are going to improve these things. And hey, I'm the CEO. You can reach out to me like anytime if you have any concerns. And no, we are not selling your data to anyone else. We're planning on building artificial intelligence on top of all of this and delivering the analytics to you. And yes, you will pay us for that, right? Once you see the value, you'll pay us for that. So it's, we are doing something. Like, you come in and you go, hey, how do I get all this for $10? Well, yes, you do get this for $10, but eventually you'll realize the analytics are worth thousands of dollars, and you'll pay us that happily.
How do you decide the pricing? You just mentioned different scales of numbers here. How do you decide what's worth what amount? Because obviously $10 is too low of a price, right? And then when you start talking hundreds or thousands of dollars, like how do you decide what is that number? That's a common issue that all companies face, right, especially with software, where there's the scale issue is it doesn't cost you marginal work to have a new customer.
Correct. Well, the pricing is really interesting because how do you price appropriately for the right folks, right? There are a lot of people that are just starting out, and I didn't want this technology to be inaccessible. So we're working on a freemium model where we'll have a permanently free tier, especially for the folks that really need it. Because being a small business owner, being poor, quite frankly, I remember there was a time where $10 a month would have actually hurt, right? And I appreciated the businesses that allowed me to use their software, that helped me, figure things out to a point where I could make money. As a matter of fact, we spent thousands of dollars on software that I used for free once upon a time, earlier on in my entrepreneurial career. And I think many others will resonate with this. So we're trying to figure out our pricing in that way as we provide more value for you. As you're a larger business, more employees, and you need things like link attribution, marketing attribution. You need automation, and when we start providing value for you, such that you're not having to make 10 more hires, that is a very, very material cost that you're saving. Or if we're helping you increase your revenue by 3x, like for the dentist, for example, we're helping them make an extra $400,000 a year. Like, they didn't care if it was $10 or $300 or $1,000. Why? The benefit outweighed the cost.
But then you could just keep charging more and more and more, right? You could charge
$1,000. Depending on the business and depending on the value that they're getting from it, we want to charge folks appropriately for what they get out of it. And of course, there's the smaller businesses that we want to just give Yobi to for free. Maybe startups who are starting out, we give them a grant. So those are some of the things that we're working out right now. Whether we give startup packages where you get to use Yobi for free for, let's say, like 6 months or a year, especially folks coming from disadvantaged communities, right? Because you have startups who have millions of dollars in the bank, who don't necessarily need your extra money, and there are startups who are very early on. They're just getting started, and having access to those tools and trainings could make a big difference.
This brings me to a couple of your goals that you've talked about. You've meant, or explain what you mean when wanting, quote, empower geeks and entrepreneurs to make a more peaceful world. What's influenced that goal? Certainly a lot of what you've described here is your way of saying, I'm not going to gouge everybody. I'm going to give people an opportunity to do that.
Correct. So remember I mentioned Mike Milken as being one of my mentors, and had a very interesting conversation at one point in my life and career. So having been very poor before and not being poor on the other side, I started to feel very unfulfilled. And I started feeling very unfulfilled and very unhappy about being wealthier. So I was like, what can I do? I was like, I could go to one of the wealthiest people that I know, which is Mike. And my dad had passed away at this point. So I went to him and I said, Mike, I can't ask my dad. He's passed away. This is a weird issue that I'm having. Like I've had some material success, nothing like you, but I've had some material success and I already don't like it. I feel, and he kind of chuckles, sits down, and he talks to me for, it felt like at least like a couple hours, kind of giving me these life lessons that have stuck with me. So one of the first things he looks at me, leans in, and he goes, I want you to ask yourself, why are you making money? You only need so much to have a roof over your head, take care of your family. And if you're in the position where you're making way more than that, why? Why are you doing that? Is it because you want to be a consumer? Because if you're a consumer and you keep consuming that, it will destroy you. And for the first time, I really started thinking about that. And I had started to become too much of a consumer. And, in the Constitution, or in the, the pursuit of happiness, right? Which is a very American thing. We often conflate the pursuit of pleasure with the pursuit of happiness, and they're very different things. What I really wanted was happiness.
And a lot of happiness costs nothing.
Right. And happiness is very different from pleasure.
Yeah.
So what I had been doing inadvertently, and I think a lot of people in my position who come into money after not having it, right? They start pursuing pleasure, like, cars, material things, right? Yes, those are nice. I'm not saying that's bad, but it's really important not to conflate that with happiness. So what he was asking me was, are you using money to just consume? And overconsumption is bad. Any way you look at it, you can only consume so much. You consume too much, you're going to destroy yourself. You're going to destroy the things that you love the most. Having weight issues myself, I totally could tell. I was like, yeah, you're right. If I overconsume, if I spend money on these random things, like what he mentioned is, he said, if you're just buying a Ferrari with your money and that's all you're doing, does that make you feel fulfilled? I know that you look at posters of Ferraris, you look at that, and oftentimes in advertising, that's what they show you as success. But is that really success? And he said, where's your money going? So I know about him. And he said, I have 6 floors in my building. 2 of them bring money in, and 4 of them give it out, so that the world can be a better place. So I can work on a world that's more to how I think it should be. Not that he's trying to shape it, but he wants to work on making the world a better place that gives him happiness. And even after being a billionaire, that's why he gets up 4 a.m. That's why he was sitting down talking to me. And by the time we had this conversation, I'd already known him for more than a decade. And I knew he meant that. I saw that. He walked the walk. So it's not like he was preaching this from the pulpit, but this was a very private conversation where he's like, this is why I do what I do. This is why I find fulfillment and happiness And I really asked myself, wow, he's right. What's that for me? How am I going to give my money away? Because that's the problem with being in software. If you start a business, you start realizing like you get crazy amounts of money all of a sudden, right? It's like, what do you do with that? Not giving it to yourself is actually a very important principle. It's like being on the keto diet or something, right? Taking care of yourself and knowing where do you want that additional resource to go if you're lucky enough to have it. Right? And I mean lucky, because it's not true for everybody. But if you're lucky enough to have it, where do you want it to go? And what do you really believe in? The other principle he taught me was, or he told me about, is said, if you really believe in feeding people, taking care of the homeless, for example, you'll be working at a soup kitchen today. You're not going to wait until you're a billionaire to take care of homelessness. You will be doing something today. So he asked me, what are you doing today? And I left that conversation like, oh my God, how do I answer these questions?
Well, like I'm doing nothing
right
now.
Right? Like, because I'm doing nothing. I'm just chasing after money. That's why I feel unfulfilled and empty, right? Because I'm getting the money. Now I'm going, now what? Right? The model that I took for my entire life was just, spinning rims. Coming out of the ghetto, that's what we were told was success, is like spinning rims. Well, I went back and I thought about it, and I realized I love being around geeks. Because geeks to me represent the kind of folks that love building. Like growing up in Southeast Asia, I saw the abject poverty, the destitution that was there when I was growing up. And then I saw what geeks like myself were able to do there. Like India is transformed, Bangladesh has been transformed by entrepreneurs, by folks who are going in there who are all about building. And in doing so, they've brought economic opportunity. They have reduced hunger, homelessness, a lot of these things. And I thought to myself, what better way could I serve? And during this time, there was also the recession. It was a really weird spot to be in, where I was doing really well during the recession. And I thought to myself that the best thing I could do is help empower those brilliant minds, the human capital Mike Milken had been talking to me about, and the human capital that I know, like being NASA geek, AI geek myself. I know myself. I know how much I could produce, and I knew that there were thousands of others like me. So I started Trep Hub, which brought together people and just brought together the human capital, let them chat with each other. And we ended up launching over 30 different startups, all without money, we were not funded. It's just bootstrapped, just whatever we had amongst ourselves. I started my first business out of there myself, and so did others. We started some really awesome nonprofits as well. One of them being Steadytown, which houses homeless people and has housed over 100 homeless families. So yeah, empowering geeks is very near and dear to my heart, because that's kind of my mission in life, is to empower these folks, empower these entrepreneurs, folks that want to build. Because if you're a builder, like if you're playing Legos, if you're playing Legos and somebody just comes and kicks over all the blocks, like, how much that hurts, and you will never do that to someone else, right? And that to me is like how builders feel. They want to build and they want peace. They don't want someone coming and kicking over their blocks. They don't want anybody kicking over other people's blocks, because building is the special thing. We appreciate it. And if I could empower more of these builders around the world, if I could be a part of empowering this, I already see this trend around the world. I can see how that can make for a peaceful, more just, and hopefully more meritocratic world.
Because we didn't explicitly say, but one of your other goals is to export the American dream by making venture capital success accessible to people around the world. And a lot of what you just described is that what you just said.
Yeah. So not just venture capital. I feel venture capital is a small part of the startup ecosystem. I think it finds opportunity. Venture capital finds opportunity. And the American dream, being an immigrant myself, is a big part of my identity. Being an immigrant myself, I realized the American dream, more than anything, is about meritocracy. If you work hard, you can make it. That is such a powerful idea. I think people come from all over the world to America to partake in that. And I want to export that. The reason I say I want to export that is because I think you can export that now. Because of the internet and because of the current world that we live in, we're much more connected as people. Globalization's had its impact, and you may have different views on it, but I feel it's been a positive impact. As I travel around the world, I'm starting to see that. I'm starting to see more cities wanting to become hubs so that people will immigrate there. The knowledge workers will immigrate there, because the knowledge workers can now be found wherever, and they don't necessarily have to leave where they are. If COVID's given us anything, it's this: that you can hire somebody in Senegal, you can hire somebody in Algeria, in my case, right? And they don't necessarily want to leave their families. They don't want to leave their cities where they've grown up. More oftentimes than not, culturally, they get us. They watch the same Netflix shows, right? They want to do the same things. And you get on these Zoom calls and you're like, wow, I'm talking to someone else on the other side of the world, but we can really connect. I feel this geeky connection. And geeks in the 90s felt this for the first time when we were on the internet, right? It's this great meritocratic, level playing field where you were connecting with people far away on BBS groups and whatnot. You smile because I think you resonate with that, right? It's like suddenly you realize there's a lot more of us around the world, folks that love building, and they don't have to leave. Like I had to leave Bangladesh, I had to come here. I spent many nights sleeping in the subways, which I wish I didn't have to in New York City. I had to do a lot of things that didn't have to do with computer science, right? And I see a lot of other folks that go through a similar journey. They may have a PhD and they're chopping onions. Why? They just, came to France or came to America. And it takes them years to get to a point where they're actually able to utilize their skills. But thanks to the internet, thanks to how the pandemic brought out the fact that at the end of the day, you just care about what work someone's putting out. So about a decade ago, I think I was a little early, I ended up hiring folks in the Philippines, in Bangladesh, in India, in Egypt. And just because they had internet, they were able to work with me. And they continue to work with me. It's been over a decade. I've finally visited some of them.
You finally met them. Like they've been working so great for 10 years. You finally get a visit from me.
Right. Like at the time, it didn't feel real. What a lot of folks said during COVID, they're like, I don't know what day of the week that is. That's been true for me for over a decade, right? It doesn't feel real because, you don't have the trappings of an office. We're not all in the same place. But I'll tell you what, the money is very real, right? The economic opportunity that this created for at least my tiny group of fellow geeks all over the world is very real. They've been able to have material impacts on their families, on their immediate communities. And I believe that's scalable. And I believe that is what I can put a lot of hope in going forward.
What's your current biggest challenge right now? Is it finding more good employees? Is it finding more customers? Is it raising capital? What's your biggest issue right now?
Fortunately, raising capital is on, I know right now it's a very difficult time for most startups to raise capital, but I'm in a very fortunate position to be in artificial intelligence, to have a growing company, to have really solid business fundamentals. The part that I believe is the most limiting factor for us right now is finding the right talent. So what we do is on the bleeding edge of technology. So we're looking for artificial intelligence practitioners. We're looking for folks who share the same vision, who share the same culture. We are remote first. So that means you have to be okay with working with a remote team, understand the communication overhead that comes with it. So yeah, you probably see pictures of me on LinkedIn all over the world. I am recruiting wherever we can find people, and I'm trying to connect them. I'm trying to sell them this vision of the future. They're like, well, I should go work for Google. It's like, no, you can stay where you are and you can work for the next Google, right? So when they see me, they meet me, there's a little bit more trust. And I'm trying to get folks together so they feel it, because it's a paradigm shift. And we have to lead the way, and we have to find those folks who will understand the culture, who have the requisite knowledge, who have the requisite brain power to do what we need to do.
A couple of things that you're doing, obviously it's AI and it's communications, right? How businesses communicate with their customers and how customers communicate with businesses. It makes me think about everything right now with Chat GPT, OpenAI, the idea of AI generated content. From your perspective, being a true AI expert practitioner, somebody that is earning revenue in AI, when you see what's being done there, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm just really excited. As an AI practitioner, it's been really weird because you'd say artificial intelligence, and sometimes folks would roll their eyes like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of IBM, I've heard of Watson." There are lots of things promised but not delivered. But you're finally starting to see what artificial intelligence can really do. The AI folks have been really hard at work, and you see things like ChatGPT. But ultimately, I think the problem that I've been tackling since my early entrepreneurial days is that people don't necessarily want to buy AI. They don't know to buy AI. Just like I didn't know what a CRM system was, most small business owners don't know how many pounds of AI they need in their business, right? Like, hey, you want to buy some AI? I can also build space flight systems. Would you like to buy 2 pounds of space flight systems? Right? Like, that's just not how they think, right? A small business owner, they're a lot more pragmatic and a lot more practical. So they have to have something that they understand, and they also understand value. This is the second part where I realized that a lot of the business community might underestimate the small business community, that they won't get it. No, they totally get it, and they're willing to pay for it. And I've demonstrated in my previous businesses where they're willing to pay for technology that empowers them. It's just they might not know the technical terms, right? It's really impossible to sell artificial intelligence. Yes, ChatGPT is cool, but at the end of the day, you have to explain to that dentist or to that car wash owner, how does this really help you? How does this save you money or make you money, right? Businesses are rather simple institutions in that you make money, you serve customers, and you try to do that while making a profit.
Right. And they don't really care if it's AI doing it or if somehow you hired 1 million mechanical Turks who are just going to crank out little things for them as long as it works for them, right? Like, I don't think anyone cares how it's getting done, whether your code is AI or it's just a bunch of rote rules that are just hard coded in there. As long as it works, it works.
Exactly. And that's what I learned the hard way. So with in the previous business, I have some additional insights on this. I remember chatting with some dentists, friends who became friends, and they sat down and they said, "Ahmed, I have no idea what you do. I know you're very tech savvy. I know there's like artificial intelligence and all these algorithms that you use. But when I introduce you to my friends, please don't tell them about artificial intelligence because they'll get scared and they'll think you're building Terminator," right? So I know many AI folks are very proud nowadays. Some days not, but nowadays they're very proud to be like, "Oh, I'm in artificial intelligence."
But back then it was like, just don't talk about that. Just don't say that.
Well, I think even now, right? Artificial intelligence has this aura around it, right? I think it's a lot easier just to communicate value. One of the reasons we try to make Yobi accessible, simple, is so that it doesn't seem intimidating, so that it makes sense. This is what it's doing. This thing is recording your phone calls and summarizing it for you to make it easier for you to catch up when it's your shift on customer service, when it's your turn to call that customer back. Oh, we're also automating the messaging, automating the follow-up. We're helping you figure out which customers are paying you, which customers are behind. We're helping you connect the dots. Oh, this is like having an expert business analyst on your team that's helping you make more money. Those are things that folks can understand, right? As opposed to like, oh, this is theoretically very cool. How is this practically good for me? And if you can get that into their hands, which is why the need for a phone system is pretty obvious. The need to communicate with your customers is pretty obvious. I myself actually built some of the artificial intelligence that we're currently using for our clients. I built it for myself because I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know how to sell. So I actually recorded myself on conversations, and I coached myself on with the sentiment in the conversation.
Oh, the script. So you can figure out exactly, like, say these words and not those words. And what are we keyword looking for what the prospect is saying, and different paths depending on what they're saying. That's my guess, is what you're trying to sort out.
Correct. Or what words am I saying that are turning them off, or where am I being
Oh, like
confused?
where the sentiment immediately drops as soon as you say a certain
Correct.
word?
Correct. Okay. Like for me, for example, I realize the value of simplifying complex technical words, right? Uh, like analytics, I think a lot of folks understand now, but there are things that people don't understand. Like if I'm on a call with a small business owner and I say, "Oh, we just did this regression analysis," and I'm actually intimidating that person. I am lowering the probability of conversion, and I'm doing the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to explain in simpler terms what regression analysis is, because they're perfectly smart. If I share my screen and I show them, hey, we looked at your data, then they're impressed by it, right? So by being able to tell how the other person is feeling and how they're perceiving you, and a recording analysis of that, and AI, like artificial intelligence, can give you that feedback very quickly. I started improving as a salesperson. I started improving as a communicator, and I started making more money, which is, which as a small business is always very important. Like the best kind of generative AI is the one that helps you generate more cash, and that's the kind of generative AI I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Where do you see the industry over the next 2 to 5 years? Is what you're doing is going to become more, I'm going to say, available, more commonplace, right? If you're doing it, there's going to be competitors who want to do it too. We're seeing generative AI now. We're seeing more just technology available, where it's that sentiment measurement and responding to that. What does the world look like in the next few years, where every salesperson is going to know exactly how to push my buttons because they've got some kind of AI tool that I can't see, and next thing you know, I'm buying a bunch of stuff that I didn't want, but they knew exactly what to say to get my sentiment up?
Well, so it's interesting that you bring that up. The market that I see coming is nothing like we've seen in the past. Most of the times we extrapolate based on the knowledge that we have from the past, but we have these emerging market trends, emerging software trends, similar to what you saw at the beginning of computing. I was just talking to someone about Bill Gates in the 70s, right? Imagine being Bill Gates in the 70s going, I'm gonna buy these other software companies. I'm gonna buy PowerPoint, and that's gonna be really huge someday. And IBM looking at you going, what are you talking about? Software is for us, software stuff we give away for free. Yeah, you can have that, right? They couldn't imagine how huge it would be. Microsoft's worth $1.8 trillion, even in this market, right? Their market capitalization, $1.8 trillion. They make more money than many nation states combined. So you can basically create these things that are of enormous value if you can see what the future might look like. I feel like we're in that kind of a situation right now with artificial intelligence. What it is fundamentally doing is changing what's happening with value creation, because you have human capital. You have, who creates value? The business owners, the employees, service employees, like they create value. Somebody driving your food over to you is creating value by making you not have to go and pick up the food. That's now getting augmented with artificial intelligence. Human beings are going to be supercharged. Traditionally, you could only manage maybe 5 employees, 7 employees by yourself, because it's really hard to keep track of a lot of people. If you're a good salesperson, you were probably constrained by the number of relationships you could keep going, number of relationships you could keep warm. Well, all of that is changing now with the advent of artificial intelligence. It's like this superhuman assistant that can do things that a normal human being cannot do.
And if you don't have it, you're going to fall behind the competition.
Yes. So it's going to be like bringing a knife to a laser gunfight, right? So if you don't have it, you're going to be not just fall behind the competition. You're probably not going to exist.
Right. It's like not having email at some point in the last 20 years, or not having a website, where it's like you can't just be a yellow page phone call 9 to 5 only operation, right? Like everyone else is more accessible. So it feels something like just so fundamental like that if you don't have it, people are just going to move on to the next thing, next company.
Correct. So artificial intelligence is already seeped into many parts of our lives. Like your calendar reminding you where to go. Like if you get in your car, your phone tells you, are you trying to go here? Siri or Alexa, whatever have you. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing I'm probably waking up people's devices if they're listening to. But it's in every part of our lives already. It's just going to be a lot more present, especially in business. I see it as being a lot more of the value creator. And this is the most interesting thing about generative AI is artificial intelligence can now create a lot more value that traditionally was only in the realm of people. So it can write code. I don't think it's going to replace people. I think it's going to enhance people. So you can do more with fewer people. So I'm actually very hopeful for a future where humanity can be more human, when we have more time, more like the best people are going to be the people who are really good at connecting with one another in a very human sense, right? So that because what we had been beating into humanity since the industrial age is be more machine-like, be more structured, be more organized, be more this, right? Now I think be more creative, be more fun, be more human, right? It's okay. The car will kind of know to stay within the lanes. when that out of, when something sudden happens, take over the wheel. I think that's a really great way of explaining what's coming is when something crazy happens, this is what human beings are really good at, right? We can look at sand and somehow think genes in our head, and we can keep doing that. And now we're enhanced by artificial intelligence. Maybe you go into DALL-E and type in sand genes and it gives you some ideas, and then it helps you ideate. Like, how cool is that, right? So I'm really excited for the future. Yes, there's going to be disruptions, but it's always been a good thing in my opinion.
And last thing before we go, everything you've achieved so far, looking back on all this, looking where you are right now in your nice wood paneled office with your Post-its, anything you wish you could tell your younger self?
Yeah. Biggest one is, to trust in yourself, like really trust in yourself, believe in yourself. I think the negative bias often is tuned very high, especially for engineers. Failures that are not fatal are not that bad. So yes, take more risks. We over-index on failures. Oh, what if my startup fails? What if this failed? Now, having failed many times, many times, I realize how much stronger it's made me. So avoid failures that are going to kill you, right? Like, if you just want to do stunt biking or something, like really think twice about that. But
startup failures fine, stunt biking failures not fine. That's the difference.
Yeah, like be careful about which failures you pick. Broke both of my legs on a motorcycle the first time I rode it.
There you go. So, don't do that.
Those failures are not so good, but the other failures, you get over them, and they're not as bad as you make it out to be in your head. The second one is one that I was recently reflecting on is step back, relax, and enjoy the journey, because really the journey is the reward. Every step, even the hard days, it seems like it's the end of the world. It's not. If you can step back and just look at it, look at the beauty and realize this day will never come back, you will cherish it. That conversation with this person is actually very special. And you'll start realizing how awesome of a journey your life can be, especially if you're a little bit more present in the moment and enjoying the journey, because then you get that double reward. Eventually you will have more success. You take enough swings, you'll get some out of the park. But don't wait for the out of the park. Enjoy the swings too.
Amazing. What a great conversation. I really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much. Just a fascinating story. Everything you've done across so many dimensions. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you, Eric, for having me.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.